of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to my series of deep dialogues. These are vital conversations I engage in with global soul stewards from all over the planet, providing us with vital understandings about how we can create a new hierarchy of values to help us evolve into a brave new world. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
We may have lost Brandon, who, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, he was here, but he's calling in from the Los Angeles district, and I think there's something magnetic going on there. So anyway, welcome to you, those of you who are here, whether you're here in person or here in recording, so to speak, watching the recording. Welcome. Welcome, Willow and Stacy and Barbara and Tiff. It's wonderful to have you here. And here we are into the 13th deep dialogue of this particular season, which for those of you that are, oh, Elizabeth, hello. For those of you who are unfamiliar, seasons, generally speaking, run in 12-week sections. And there are 3 a year. And through the 12 weeks, I concentrate on 12 male soul stewards. And then there's a little bit of a break of a month or 5 weeks. And then the next season comes with 12 ladies. And of course, as you realize that this is the 13th. So we're spinning over this week and also next week to the 14th. It's the first time I've done it. Otherwise, we normally stay with 12. I'm just playing for time because I hope Brandon is able to come back and join us. He was supposed to be on a few weeks ago, but unfortunately things went slightly wrong with his internet then. So let me give you his bio, which is quite short, so we can tune into a successful recovery. He was here just now, we were talking. Brandon BEACHUM is an entrepreneur and author and host of the Positive Head podcast, which he founded in 2015, and to date has amassed 25 million downloads as one of the most consistently rated top 5 spirituality shows on Apple. Brandon has been an entrepreneur since childhood and co-founded Resort Share, which in 2015 was named the 568th fastest growing private company in America on a list of 5,000 companies. Today, Brandon's primary focus is on helping people shift their perspective into an understanding of their own ultimate nature of reality and to create more of what they desire for the world. He is also a host for a late night show known as Optimistic. His book Golden Book was published in 2021, and there will be a special offer associated with this book for you to download a free copy, whether this is an audio or indeed in electronic book through Kindle. So he seems to be having a big issue. Steve, how lovely. Ange, lovely to see you. Sarah, Tanaz, wonderful to see you. As you see, my correspondent for this deep dialogue was present, but now he seems to have disappeared. So I'm sure he's trying to find a way of accessing a challenging internet connection. Are there any questions that you would like to ask me about any of the work that you perceived thus far? Oh, here he is.
Hello.
You there? I was just treading water. This is Brandon, everybody. Doesn't he look amazing?
Hello, everyone.
Okay, he's back. So what I've done is I've just read through your bio, and technology is not reliable, says Steve. Yeah, well, on this occasion, it was a bit wavering. So here is Brandon BEACHUM, and I'm bearing in mind that he's a very much accomplished gentleman. As you see, he's still in the prime of youth. And so Brandon wanted to speak about the nature of the power of thought leadership. So where do we begin, dear Brandon? Where do we begin? Could you define what you mean by thought leadership?
Yes, and I will just start by saying thank you for the prime of, how did you put it? Prime of youth or something, after I just had my 49th birthday 2 days ago. So,
Hey, looking good.
yeah, so I like hearing that. So how do I define thought leadership? You know, I think I instantly, when you ask me that question, what comes to mind is, I believe it was Lao Tzu said, why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Therefore, it is king of 100 streams. And it's all about service and helping. Leader is really someone who helps to remove obstacles for others. That's what I found in my times having the privilege of leading other people is, well, how do I sort of envision where we're going to go, help to steer the ship, and really inject humility into that. It's like, you're here to serve and remove obstacles, and it's then that rising tide raises all ships kind of thing is able to happen. When I think a lot of times with leadership, it can get ego can get in the way. EGO, everyone's greatest obstacle. And so I've really worked hard in my, in my life that, I've had times where I've had 100+ employees, and times where it's just me, like doing, every job. I'm the janitor. I'm the, so I've had a lot of contrast with humility and real, where I've really landed with leadership is just being aware. The sum is greater than the equal parts, and it takes everyone to really move the needle.
And of course, your experience, I imagine, please forgive me if this is incorrect, but your experience has been ideal in the sense of the fact that you proclaimed yourself an entrepreneur very early in your life. And so therefore, there you have been commanding the zone of your own creative productivity. And employing people within the circumference of that zone, rather than stepping into the old paradigm leadership principles, such as, for example, in high-ranking corporatocracy. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And ideal. It's interesting because it's like followers or listens to a show, or numbers never end, and so it's so easy. I mean, I remember I worked early on with someone who built our bands used to play together. This is going back 20 years ago or so, and we were like sister bands, and that was a whole entrepreneurial venture in of itself, pursuing music at one time and it being a really important part of my life. And this person, I remember him telling me about my cousin's a pretty successful entrepreneur. He used to come over from Africa when we were kids. Our moms are sisters. And he was he said he's going to build batteries one day. And now he has that same cousin he was referencing has the biggest factory on the planet building batteries, Elon Musk. And it's like, so you think of, it's all relative. Like, I've always fancied myself an entrepreneur from childhood, and then you get into the game of comparison, and it's like, I've had a lot more failures than I've had successes, to be honest. I mean, and I use that term relatively because is there really such a thing as a failure? It's you learn, or you win. And so yeah, I say that very loosely, but yeah, in a lot of ways ideal. Certainly achieve things that few have, and with the wins, and super grateful. And it's easy to compare to ex-business partner and people like that who are just at a whole nother level in what they've achieved, so it's an interesting dance, this comparison thing.
And where was the seed planted earlier in your life around the substance of entrepreneurship?
Good question. You know, I think it was just being a part of my makeup and dharmic path. And, I remember maybe 10, 11 years old. Um, a kid started selling candy at school, and I saw this and I took it to another level. I started, oh, wow, okay, that's interesting. He was just doing it a little bit. So I made it like a thing. I like went and started every day. I'd ride my bike up to 7-Eleven convenience store and get the nickel Jolly Ranchers and bubble gum. And next day I'm selling them for 25 cents at school, and it started become such a thing that they then had to make new rules that you could not, turn school into your portable convenience store. But for a minute, I was the rich kid with $10 or so a day. I was really I was living large. So, and it just kind of continued from there. Then I went and, okay, Dad, will you go buy wholesale candy bars at this place for me? Well, they're 30 cents a piece for Nestle Crunch. I remember. And then it's like, I'd go door to door. Oh, they're $1. Oh, this is great. Is this for your little league team? No, it's for me. And they were, people were either put off or really like, okay, kid.
Oh, frozen again. Well, of course, there was Brandon really beginning to take us into an interesting aspect of free marketeering, isn't it? And that's what I'm really interested in, because it takes courage and determination and a certain amount of get up and go, know-how, to consistently provide oneself with the stimuli of producing some level of success. And when I speak of success, I'm really talking about the impetus that leads us to excellence, meaning that success is sustainable joy. That if we're feeling sustainable joy, then we know that we're being successful, because that's what we're here to feel. We're here to optimize our creativity full of love and joy. And the difficulty, as we all know, is that often our creativity is blunted or is shaped by the precepts that are being given to us by the old paradigm, which is what I was referring to just then with Brandon in relation to the nature of the patriarchy, which means fitting in rather than being a free marketeer that he obviously was engaging in at a very early age. That takes courage, it takes willfulness, it also takes imagination. And as you hear him speak, there is still, in his 49th year, a wonderful inner child that plays. So one of my next questions to him was, what is really happening in the substance of the way that he was, moving forward in the world and discovering his own levels of joy? The old paradigm shut him down, writes Beverly. Yeah. Hello, Beverly. And hello, Angela. We should all send positive energy. Yeah, I hope you're sending him positive energy, or willing him to come back in. So, it takes a little bit of time, I know, for questions or for comments to actually engage with me in the chat box, in the comment box. But please feel free to join me in finding something to say. It's interesting because I think, he's back. He's back.
I don't know what's happening with this. My internet, I thought it was on my end the first time it happened, but I'm able to search other sites and everything, and I keep dropping out.
Wow. Okay, so Beverly was just saying in the chat box, perhaps it's the old paradigm trying to shut him down.
It could
So
be.
I think what we need to do is to turn, that old statement of turn to our elders and our betters. Today, we're not seeing that they're necessarily our betters, but I think we just need to pledge credence And thanks for literally developing the old paradigm ways that have led towards the creation of establishment. And thank you very much, because we can actually see very clearly what those parameters are and realize
Mm.
they aren't necessarily for us, but we really thank you for sowing all of those seeds. Now what we'd love to do is to take the absolute core of what you've given us and develop and evolve all of this modus operandi into future facing credibility.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, that contrast is super necessary. And it's funny because I think about this often. We look back at things that happened in history and we're like, oh, how could they? It's so appalling and like, oh, it's so cringe, that was like this standard. But then you can look at things now and it's like, it's going to be the same when they look back in 100 years, like, you did what? You were, like, so there's still some of that to transmute. I think is what you're saying. So
Yeah. Yes, and that's a very loaded piece, isn't it? What does need to be transmuted? But it's, how do we move forward? Well, for example, in our pre-show chat, we were talking about one of the essential aspects of the essence of new thought leadership, new paradigm thought leadership, is that the new leader needs to be able to vibrate through a quality of personal vulnerability. And, that needs to be defined because, of course, you and I know that we as men have been taught that vulnerability is a lack of strength, and therefore
Right.
it's about weakness, and it needs
Right.
to be damned. It mustn't be engaged in. Whereas actually, we were beginning to talk about vulnerability in a new light.
Yeah.
And then we needed to come into the formalization of what our deep dialogue is today. So perhaps you could attend to that. What for you is the meaning of vulnerability?
Great question. And I think it's super relevant today because we've been taught, like you said, as men to, always put up your best face and always be strong and, don't let them see you cry. And, all these ideas that our forefathers sort of lived and died on these hills. And, now, luckily, I think that's changing to some degree. We're seeing that vulnerability is a superpower. If you were talk about being manly, it's like, how brave is it to show weakness? And when someone expects the opposite from you, and you could easily just, say what the people want to hear, if you will. And this started out by me saying, you asked how I was doing, and I said, honestly, I've had a little bit of a challenging stint where, some confusion and uncertainty, and not knowing, having all the answers. And what we then went to in that brief dialogue was, and aren't we lucky that we can find our way back to, I've at least come far enough to trust the mystery. That's like one of the keys in my book that I wrote a couple years ago, is like, once you realize, hey, I don't need to understand it all. The more I know, the more I realize I don't know. And there's going to be times where you feel so clear and so sure, and you can guide yourself and others at ease. And then there's going to be times where it's, I think it was, Tony Robbins, I heard talk about this one time years back, where he said, when you're in that point of confusion or uncertainty, that's just before the breakthrough is right after the breakdown, in a sense. And I think that's a really potent piece of insight in medicine for people to realize and lean into. Like, okay, I'm here. I'm feeling a little less clarity than I normally do, and that's okay. I'm going to just be here and be with it, and this too shall pass.
All conditions are temporary. This too shall pass. Yeah.
Right.
And so, bearing in mind that you're really proactive, bearing in mind that you've been self-missional since earlier on, there you were talking about going to the 9/11, and doing all of that, all of that wonderful free marketeering. What do you do? What point of resilience do you tap into when you're feeling that miasma come to you, whether it's to do with, well, wait a minute, this isn't working out in the way that I wanted to, or that you feel low in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
All conditions are temporary, is a beautiful ideal to remind ourselves of. And it is a new hierarchy. It's one of the most important aspects of this new hierarchy of values that we're developing. But what do you do from an emotional body point of view?
Yeah, I've gotten to where you said, in spirit, inspiration, right? If I'm not feeling that connected to spirit, inspiration, it's like really stopping. As someone who's such a doer, I have to be really careful. My initials are BBB, and I feel like, okay, this was encoded for a reason, for me to really learn when to stop, and like I'm sort of in maybe a survival mode energy where it's like, I got to accomplish, I got to be productive, or then if not, who am I? What am I? And when I feel myself getting into that state, and I can, take a moment to assess, it's like, oh, I'm in this sort of fight or flight energy, and that doesn't yield those type of results, that I'm seeking. So really, what am I doing? Am I, why would you, add a bunch of ingredients to a recipe if you want to cook something else? And that those ingredients aren't going to deliver what it is that we're seeking. And I think that's so for me, I just kind of, I definitely teach best what I most need to learn. It's like just constantly checking. Oh, am I in a state of agitation, stress, uncertainty? Is it fear creeping in? Okay, slow down. The best thing I can do is anything to calm my nervous system. And I think nervous system regulation has to become a huge priority, and that takes really reflecting and self-awareness. And we weren't really taught that. We just sort of go about our lives, and it's like either you're a high stress person or not, or something in between. And it's like, oh, are you really self-assessing? And if so, what are you doing? What steps can you take to really take the reins? What do you have control over?
It's a fascinating crux that you're describing, and if we go back 10, 12 years ago, the thought summation of that there is no way that we can heal the problems of the world by using the same strategy that created them.
Right.
The Einsteinian theory. So everybody said, yes, this is wonderful. That's it. Of course, that's it. But I don't remember anybody saying, well, what's the new strategy?
Right.
Right. In my own thinking, it has been very much to do with, because I've been, helping people with their bodies most of the life. They're high performers who need to stand in front of informal context, whether it's on a stage in front of a camera or, delivering a speech at a convention.
Right.
Of course, as we all know, that most people are terrified about that moment. And so in dealing with the de-stressing of getting the butterflies to fly in formation, to ride the tiger rather than being eaten by the tiger, so I've sort of, looked into this and realized that, well, surely that the old strategy was about doing. And most of the time we're not doing what we could be doing because they say so, whoever they may be. They could be just the voices in our own heads or in our own hearts, or are they to do with the critique that we're being offered that has sort of maneuvered us towards accomplishment, which is largely for competitive reasons. So all of this doing is based on a terrible neuroses. So if that's the thing that has created the paradigms that are no longer functioning, then surely it's like you were saying about BBBB. So your middle name is also a B.
Yes, it is. Yep. Brandon Brent BEACHUM.
Brandon
Brent BEACHUM.
Brandon Brent BEACHUM. You were given this. This is a beautiful piece of irony, but you were given this as a gift, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the other keys in the 8 keys in my book, BBB. And yeah, and what I found in my slow learning, slowly but surely getting a better, over time, with this process is, a lot of times if you're paying attention, when you take the time for self-care and you're not chasing out of fear or insecurity or ego or whatever it is that's driving you, fueling you, some outdated story or expectation from something external of yourself. It's interesting because taking the time to go do the thing that you love, and you get the text message that's the equivalent of 10 hours of grinding work, that's like, oh, what a piece of good news, this thing, Stewart's gonna have me on his show. Oh, well, I could have ground.
Right. So we have boggits that are interfering. Boggits are household spirits that love to create naughtinesses, evidently rather like pixies. And so, I suppose we could describe Brandon as being an elemental. He certainly is charged with a lot of spiky energy, great fun, great imagination, an intellect that loves to interrogate and to find out what's going on in the world. But this point that we're actually really moving into is really interesting, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? And what I'd love to do is to share with you a quote that I have that was given to us by the great Roosevelt, who is considered to be one of the great leaders of the Western world in a certain time frame. Those of you who are in North America, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. He said, "Good leaders possess self-awareness, garner credibility, focus on relationship building techniques, exhibit humility, empower others, stay authentic, present themselves as constant and consistent, and thereby become role models that allows them to be fully present." So you see vulnerability, this art that we're all looking into, that the whole issue of empathy, compassion, sympathetic magic, unconditional love, inclusivity, co-creativity, all of these wonderful fruits of the soul, fruits of the spirit world that we're being reminded of as being integral to these next stages of development as we develop this new hierarchy of beliefs around our freedoms in the world, around co-creativity rather than codependent, is absolutely crucial. And I would suggest that most of these principles, I'm going to repeat the quote in a second, are literally to do with classical precepts that come to us in times of great change when we're being buffeted by the flotsam and jetsam. He's back.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep you on your toes so you miss me. I'm not sure what's happening. I even just went and changed when it went down from a Wi-Fi signal to Ethernet cable. But everything else, even when we go out, for some reason, I can browse the internet, no problem. So I don't think it's that. I don't know if it's something with StreamYard or what. I'm glad to be back.
Maybe it's to do with the telecommunication process between North America and England. The magnetic plates are shifting.
I've heard
this full supermoon is huge.
I've heard this.
We're going to see extraordinary things taking place. And of course, as we know, the element of fire is really scorching our world at the moment, whether it's the heat of the sun or literally the pestilential fires that are moving through some of Central Europe, particularly
Canada just had it real bad.
Canada, of course, yeah. I mean,
and the hottest month on record in the history of planet Earth since we've been keeping records, July, is what I heard.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
The records suggested that we had a blazing June.
Yeah.
Where temperatures are really and it was the hottest June since 1844.
Wow.
So things are happening. Anyway, I was quoting this quote from Roosevelt to fill in time, so that we could have all of you when you go back. Good leaders possess self-awareness. It's what you're talking about, being present, garner credibility, focus on relationship building skills, have an exhibition of humility. And that sounds slightly pretentious today, but if we put it into the context of early 20th century linguistic, exhibiting was actually not about showing off or pretense. words. It was actually just allowing to be, empowering others, staying authentic, being present themselves to be constant and consistent, and to become good role models that are fully present. So that's Franklin D. So
Wow.
lots of interesting things there. However, what I'm really interested is about how you formulated this within your own process. Because one of the things that I was sharing as we were observing you whilst you weren't here is the whole substance of the fact that you have an immense amount of what my mother used to call get up and go. You have a lot of self-volition, you have a lot of self-will,
Yeah.
but it feels to me that it's all motivated by joy and by play. Is that correct?
I would say yes, there's a lot of play. I have a very playful life. I live in a co-living in an event space. I had 100 people at my home yesterday, playing. And so I don't know if I could say it all is motivated by play. There's definitely been for me a path of like, I am capable of conquering the world, and by golly, I got to do it, And so it's really been something where I've had to self-analyze, like, hold on, what is my motivation? I'm having fun a lot of times with it, but I can get caught up in the weeds of, the results too much. And
Yeah.
I've had to really work on that and keeping that, lest the Bible says, to paraphrase, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's like my favorite scripture to, I don't quote many times, but it's usually that. And so I've really worked hard at being the poster adult for childhood, and have had some success at that in some ways. And then if I'm honest, to the times where I've like, allowed my nervous system to get dysregulated and overstressed, and that's really agitation and overwhelm has definitely been great teachers for me, and continue. It's something I have to check daily still,
Yeah. Well, there's good maintenance, isn't it? That we're aware of that within self. So we have to keep checking. But of course, before you were cut off, we were talking about BBB.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can just take us into, well, in those moments when things are fractious and you look into the first major statement, which, wait a minute, all conditions are temporary, this will pass.
Yeah.
Secondly, then what do you do? What do you do? What do you be?
Yeah. Great question. It's, what I've seen with myself is I can find myself really being a perfectionist, trying to control the outcome of things. And I've got a project or something, and I'm literally, getting my butt kicked over and over, where it just like, and I'll hit that point where sort of a wall will come, and it's like, oh, you're fighting too hard. Like, let go. I had a guest on the podcast on Positive Head, my podcast, maybe 2 months ago. I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but his method was called the Sedona Method, and he's been teaching this for 40 years or so. And really fascinating guy. And he said, really what it boils down to is every time you find yourself holding on and it's creating pain and discomfort, letting go. It's just a process of stripping away and letting go over and over and over again. And I think for the way that I am wired, and it's been particularly, challenging at times for me to really get that, because, you get to a point where you're so good at something that's second nature, and I'm somewhere in between still, where I'm way better than I used to be. And I'm aware enough of my own shortcomings to know there's still work to do. There's still room for growth. So, and of course, I believe once our opportunity for growth has been exhausted, we exit stage left from the play of life anyway. So,
Absolutely. I'm in my 7th decade, and it's certainly proving to be absolutely true. That this is a process of constant evolution.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So let's stop, detach, and observe. what's going on.
Yeah.
And so suddenly by doing this, the neuroses or that tight nerve management suddenly begins to ease out.
Yeah.
Particularly when it seems circumstances are disturbing our flow.
Yep.
And in that moment, for me, it's always looking into, well, wait a minute, the universe is saying something to me here.
Right.
The universe is actually saying I'm going in the wrong direction.
Right.
In which direction? Okay, get still, and the universe will speak to you about which direction to go in.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is just not get caught up in, yes, but when? How? It's just, let's get still so that we can actually really feel the pulse of Mother, Divine Mother, giving us the succor. Have you left me again? Are you still there? This is really interesting, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? In the 150 deep dialogues that I've had, I don't think I've been affected by Los Angeles in this way ever. I'm just going to go through your comments in the chat box. Steve saying the current global rising temperatures are a reminder from Mother Nature for humanity to go inside, literally. Yeah. To go into in-depth spirituality, we must return to the inner realms to proceed in the outer realms. Wow, Steve, profound. Remember that thing called COVID? Where's it gone? However, you know, the phenomenon meant that we were involved in something called a global lockdown. At that time, I refused to use that phrase. I saw it as Mother Earth giving us an opportunity to go into inner stillness. And I was here. I was in London. I wasn't in New York, my other bliss city. I was here, and I remember the stillness was just so extraordinary. And within that silence, she speaks. Do you see? It is my firm conviction that the divine literally is living in the stillness, not in the action, not in the dynamism. And if we can get this balance between dynamic stillness, then automatically we begin to enter into the providential process of what I feel Brandon is beginning to open up to talk about, so that we can hear the deep, deep, deep issue going on within. Now, it's very difficult, of course, if we have young ones that are needing to be succored. He's back.
I guess this is going to be the pop in and out episode, just to keep people on their feet. Apologies, this keeps happening, but
it's okay. So I just would love everybody to do something, to be something. Can you right now, because Brandon and I are going to continue our conversation, but can you, all of you, can you just simply really place a highly focused laser on Brandon, not to burn him, but to keep him here, okay? We know that thought creates reality, so let's really have our own cosmic experiment. Okay, back to where we were. Are you okay?
I'm great.
Okay. So I was filling in about the whole substance of getting still and of really listening into Mother Nature. And I used the impetus or the inspiration of what happened during COVID when we were in the global lockdown, as opposed to the global silence, and the joy of what it brought to me in this city of just being in stillness, you know, not being able to see anybody. Of course, that's where Deep Dialogues was born. Beginning of COVID, because I realized that I was having remarkable conversations with people, some dear ones, some new people that were coming in that I was being introduced to, and we were meeting on Zoom. And I realized that there was a totally different vibrational field about the quality of our conversations, that we were really giving ourselves time and moving into causative detail about really powerful phenomenon in our lives.
Yeah.
I'm going to create Deep Dialogues. So back to you.
I love
that. Can you remember what you were saying?
What was I saying?
You were taking us through that gymnastics of, you know, on one level, your proaction leads to great success. But then when there's a point of shift,
Mm,
drastically you're often taken into
right.
something which could be described as being uncomfortable.
Yep.
And what do I do in uncomfortable? We got
Yeah.
stillness.
Yeah. And analyzing, like, hold on, I'm uncomfortable because I have expectation or need for this to be a certain way. Like I know, like, let's, I often say we're playing checkers and our higher self is playing chess. So, move in a certain direction, and people often will say expectation is the enemy. I personally don't believe that. I believe we all, whether we admit it or not, have some level of expectation. The issue really comes in when with our attachment to that expectation and
Yeah.
that aim of direction. So that's really, oh, I'm feeling dysregulated. I'm feeling agitated. I'm feeling disappointed. Why? Oh, because I'm attached to an idea of what should be, as if I actually know. And so, hold on, put yourself in your place where you belong. Your aim is to make them the best of what is around. That's my job, to manage my vibration, the number one job I feel we all have. And if my vibration is, in a state of fight or flight and resistance and, agitation, I'm doing a bad job at the paramount, premier, number one job. Our varied paths, are very different and varied, but I think that's the number one job that we all have in common, is to
Brilliant.
manage our vibration.
Brilliant. So what we're seeing is that expectation equals fixed point of reference.
Right.
And we're seeing it's no longer feasible in this extraordinary ability that we're now gaining of being more in flow, rather than caught within the net of the
Yep.
patriarchy, which is all about control, coercion, and manipulation. Again, fixed points. So what is the alternative? Is there another banner head? Because expectation is such a banner headline, isn't it? Is there another one which allows us to flow?
Yeah. Yes. I would say, okay, this isn't working. I'm not in this space that I need to, that I'm not managing my vibration effectively. What can I do now from where I'm at with what I've got to adjust that? And that could be as simple as a walk. That could be as simple as taking a break. That could be as simple as brainstorming a new idea that excites you. Really finding, it's like our job is to find the path of least resistance, and and seek that out. And if you're constantly hammering against the wall of resistance, you can't even begin to start thinking about another path. And so, oftentimes I think of Esther Hicks, or Abraham, I'm sure you're familiar with. Hearing her talk about this years ago, it's like, if you'll just stop paddling upstream.
Oh, great. He's frozen again. You see possibly where Brandon is going, paddling upstream. So we're talking about whatever we resist persists. And Diane has just reminded me by a comment in the comment box. Diane, thank you so much for your lovely comments, having looked and listened to Ask the Angels. Diane says, I like Stewart's using the word anticipation rather than expectation, because you see, expectation is something that we've all been cultivated into being, and it's all about achieving those ends, i.e. passing those examinations so that we acquire qualifications that we then are able to prove our status by. And of course, as we all know, that actually, if we have that level of expectation, it's about fixing our attention on the horizon. And the difficulty within the journey of time is an illusion is that the horizon just keeps getting further and further and further away. So it's pointless to be involved in this fixed identity around expectation. However, what do we do with the clause? What do we do? Because expectation is a way of defining a very valid state of being. We're just seeing its Now it's redundant. So what I'm suggesting is that anticipation is a synonym, but actually anticipation is about developing rockets of desire about what we feel that we wish to gain, do you see? Because after all, we're here to feel good. We're here to actually optimize our creativity full of love and joy. We're not here to have gross difficulties in our lives, except when the difficulties come up, it's the universe telling us, well, perhaps we're going in the wrong direction. And Steve, I think you're concentrating on it here when you say thought leadership is correctly placed when our thoughts are entrained by our hearts. He's back.
Didn't you miss me again? Now you're getting used to the trick. It's like the kid that constantly like.
Now you don't. Now you see me. Now you don't. So it's giving me the exercise of staying calm and just simply filling in the gaps, which I seem to be doing quite well. So one of our regular visitors to Deep Dialogue, Steve Russo, is saying thought leadership is correctly placed when our thoughts are entrained by our hearts.
Oof, I love that. Let's bring him in on the show.
Steve is pretty cool. Find and seek the still center within, and then the answers always come, because that's where they live. Is what during one of the breaks, what I was saying is, we're really hunkering down into asking the divine, teach me what you would have me do, teach me what you would have me be, teach me what you would have me think, and teach me what you'd have me feel, which is actually a major premise of A Course in Miracles. Really what we're seeing is that the divine lives in stillness. The divine doesn't live in dynamism. That's to do with the old paradigm, which has led us towards the excesses of the ego. What was that? What was that wonderful anagram that you used for ego?
Oh, EGO, everybody's greatest obstacle. Or edging God out is another one.
Edging God out, or emotion got out.
Yeah, right. That's a good one. That's true.
Has really bad press. Anyway, I'm going into the whole substance of how heart math has given us so much information about how, if we can entrain through our hearts, the heart is an energy 5,000 times greater than the human brain.
Yeah, right. It is sending twice as many signals from the heart to the brain than the brain to the heart. And I think also, just to touch on what you said about the ego, it's like it has gotten a bad rap. I think the ego it's a necessary component of our human journey. It's when, if you put, if there's four of us going to get in a car and we put the 8-year-old behind the wheel, that's probably not the ideal setup for us to get there safely. So it needs to be put in its proper place. And that is, the heart is really meant to be the space from which we lead. And that's where spirit comes through and connects, and this higher intelligence and intuition, probably being the highest form of intelligence we can tap into, can take its place as the leader, heart-based leadership. So I love what I forget his name. What he said, Steve. Yeah, he's right on with that.
Yeah. And so ego was really intended to lead us to an understanding of a healthy selfhood. And therefore we begin the pathway of individuation. I mean, that's really what Jung intended.
Right.
And he wrote about in Dreams, Memories, and Reflections, if you haven't read it. Do read it. Carl Jung is whom I'm talking about. You guys pronounce it slightly differently. You call Jung, I think you say Carl Jung.
Yeah.
We in Europe, we tend to say Jung, as in the German.
Got it.
So that we begin to see that it's actually an entry point, as a portal into a deeper premise, which is to do with, you saying, the imaginal, the subliminal, of moving into the world of spirit, and therefore really understanding what the inner teacher, the intuition, is saying to us. How much does intuition fall into the gambit of the creation of Brandon and a new level of entrepreneurship?
That's a great question, actually. It's funny because something on my screen to the right over here just is popped up with Intuit, company name Intuit, and how much does it fall in? As much as I allow it, how much am I making space for it to come in? And and I think I would say today more than yesterday, and yesterday more than the day before, and allowing my sensitivity to, creating fertile ground for this higher form of intelligence to come through, right? In order for it to come through, it's got to have the space and fertile ground to do so. And so probably slower than some, for sure. And, but yeah, definitely a big part of my path at this point in my journey is like, what am I feeling? What sort of claircognizance is maybe coming through? What sort of knowing? And of course you find the more that you really tap into that, the more you see the results that it can bring, and really discerning between the mind. I think one of the tricky dances with intuition is the dance between what is my mind and what is my intuition, what is, and I think if you look at how the information is colored, sometimes people think, oh, I've got intuition about this thing and it's bad and I shouldn't do it. And it's like, I feel like there's probably not, with intuition, there's not going to, even if it was like, this isn't best for you to get on this plane or whatever, there's not a ton of fear in that sort of like grappling energy. It's a calm information is what the subtlety of it. I mean, I'm curious what you would say, but that's something that I've sort of honed in on. It's like, it's going to feel, if this is information coming through from your higher self, spirit guides, whatever it may be, however you look at it, it's calm and powerful and not based in like very human level emotions and energy. That is what I found. Curious what you think.
I totally agree. So, I mean, absolute congruence that, one of my greatest teachings that I was given many, many years ago through Sai Baba, so that's going back into the very early 70s, was that the divine lives in stillness. So let go.
Yeah.
And just simply be part of the flow of the universe. As long as you're just containing yourself, that you're not moving into excesses in terms of the way that physical sensations or physical sensuality is existing, that you literally do get grounded and very, very still. And then the inner impulse. I have a wonderful line that the angels, because I met these 12 angels that I've been working with since 87.
That's right.
The angels of Atlantis. They said several years ago, intuition is the super highway where we roam.
Wow. That sounds like some angelic perspective. That's beautiful. I love that.
And so, I know this, but it's interesting how life suddenly dupes us. We have to rediscover it. Yesterday I was working all weekend at the preparation of a really exciting project that I'm going to be revealing for the whole of my wonderful global community in September around the autumn equinox. And wherever I went, I couldn't find what I was looking for. And I tried over 2 days, and I was gradually becoming exhausted by this holding point. And so I suddenly heard Archangel Michael say, let go and let God in. So I said, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And he said, I think it's time for you to have fun. Okay, well, what am I going to do? It's pouring with rain outside. Should I read a book? Should I meditate? Should I watch a movie? Oh, I'll watch a movie. And I'll eat some wonderful coconut. So then I was watching the movie. And of course, I got so caught up in the movie, which was mind expanding. But then when I'd finished the movie, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And suddenly, download. And there I was writing until about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. What a great example.
Do you see?
Yeah.
Let go and then let God in.
Get out of the way. You don't have to figure it all out yourself.
So I feel you've touched on it so beautifully on a number of occasions, and we've dealt with the satellite issues, that it really, what we need to do is to manage our nervous system.
Yeah.
And that we need to, cease the neuroses of separation and move into the glory of diversity.
Well said.
Begin to feel that, we are the divine. So in our humanness, how can we be a spiritual being having a human experience, and that we need to really up our meditation. And then people say to me, is it that simple?
Yes, yes and no. Is it hard? Is it easy? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of being a role model within the spiritual community, because you have set yourself in a process of leadership through all the varying companies that you've created, and particularly your podcast show, because it's indubitably one of the most successful on Apple. So in terms of being a role model, what is it that you would love people to feel about you as a role model?
Love that question too. What comes up for me in a time where it's so, and I touched on this earlier, how we can fall into this trap of comparison and separation. And what I would say to that question is, if you are tuning into this broadcast out of the infinite things vying for your precious attention, and here you are with me and Stewart, and all of us are having this experience together, I would say because we're such close vibrational matches that it's able to happen. That which is like unto itself is drawn. Water seeks its own level. And so here we are. So if anyone is inspired at all by anything that I've said or done or any of that, I would say, well, congratulations to us, because for you to even be aware of it is because we're such a close vibrational match. And if you take that approach, like literally it's you reflecting you back to you, very closely. We are branches, if source is an infinite tree, as infinite as it may be, there's still going to be a branch on that tree and leaves flapping in the wind of eternity. And that's the experience we're having together in this now moment. And we're very close soul family. And so the fact that that's happening, instead of a comparison of, oh, I could never do that, I could never, well, Stewart, look at how eloquently he speaks. It's like the perfect, delivery, and, or, oh, Brandon did this thing, business, whatever it is. Like, instead of those stories of separation, let's see it for what it is, and that it's actually super close vibrational match. It's appearing in front of you because it's that far away, so that's what I would say to get from my story and my energy, and what my offering is. It's yours, or you wouldn't be receiving it.
Brilliant. And I have two questions, one for you and one for the people in the comment box. There's people who are listening in. Your question is, what's the next big being project? And their question is, are there any questions you want to ask Brandon? Because unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time together. But I'm sure he won't mind if we stretch it on a little bit because of all the disappearances.
Absolutely, as long as we need to. My next big being project, I love that you put it that way. Years ago, I launched I have some fun. Oh, you there?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay. You just went away for a second. Years ago, I was guided by spirit in very dramatic fashion to launch a music distribution platform I called it Industry. And I have a lot of fun spiritual breadcrumb stories, as do you. You've shared some great stories with me in the past. And one of my most profound and dramatic was this leading me to create this platform called Industry, spelled TREE. It's like redefining the music industry. And so 2009, I followed these breadcrumbs from originally 2005, 2006 to launching a platform that was like, at the time, MySpace meets Spotify. Before Spotify, I had my own token that I would pay people out in, very, very similar to crypto, called Blooms was my token. And so it was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. And this platform grew to thousands of users. And it was all about artists, musicians being supported and working with fans, where it's more integrated. And when you asked about being, it's funny because I made a music project at that time as well, having been in a band that had just broken up, and I did a solo album, and I went by Try B, TRY-BE, which is an oxymoron because one cannot try to be, but there you go. So I launched this and it grew to thousands of users, and I hit some financial bumps and personal tragedy with a loss, and my partner brother, his partner girlfriend committed suicide, and tragedy, and so he kind of was off the market, and some money woes, and so I said, I'm going to put this on hold and call in the money to do this right without having to go to someone else, and and that's when Resort Share I was led to do this first successful business that turned into having a tiger by the tail and hundreds of employees, and and so I never went back to industry. But originally it was only to fund industry. That was the vision. And now here we are all these years later, and I've gotten, kind of came up a couple years ago with an ex-business partner, like, oh, you were just ahead of yourself with that idea and platform. Now with blockchain technology, you could really do it right, and co-ownership of music rights with fans and build community around it. So, so my next, I look at it now as sort of my hero's journey project of, and then I had some very dramatic spiritual breadcrumbs again, leading me like, yes, now you're meant to bring it back now. So I'm just starting down the path of putting together some of the pieces of that puzzle. And, so it will be a conscious art community DAO, if you're familiar with that term. It's a decentralized autonomous organization. It's all about building community and spreading conscious art and primarily music initially on the planet. And so that's
amazing. And so, unfortunately, we will have to come to a point of completion. But I'm sure you would all, ladies and gentlemen, agree could have been read as tribe, as in tribe.
Yeah, right. That's right. I was about to say that. So they got it. It could have been read as tribe. Now I'm bringing the tribe together. So
I'm sure you will all agree we send lots of love and light to Brandon in the next level of being. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry it's been slightly punctuated, but hey, we've had fun.
So much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now put you in contact. Yeah, here we are. This is your special coda, everybody. goldenkey.gift-use code LOVE, and you will be able to download the Golden Key, Brandon's book, for free as a gift. Isn't that amazing?
Audio or ebook?
Or ebook, right. So thank you for your generosity. I'm thanking you on behalf of everybody, because I know everybody's going to go, what? I've got to get this. And ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to meet me this time next week for the final deep dialogue with this amazing season of gentlemen. I'm going to talk about the angelsatlantis.com in a second. And it will be my dear friend John Stewart Reed, who's coming back. He has been on a season before, but he's coming back to talk about acoustics, science, and all of the wonderful things that he's been achieving recently. On Sunday evening, there is an enchantment within the Angels of Atlantis canon of activities. Enchantment is a 90-minute workshop where we revere and chant joy, peace, love, and well-being to the full moon, so that we can all be touched by the radiant rays of the moon, because as we know, the moon is literally managing all of our feelings. Bless you. Thank you so much for coming along. Brandon, do stay where you are, and I look forward to seeing you all. Take care. Much love. Namaste.